When American soldiers first heard rumors of a grenade shaped like a baseball, many assumed it was a joke, a novelty item, a bit of wartime folklore exaggerated by bored men waiting for orders. But in 1943, inside a secured industrial complex in Rochester, New York, the idea was very real, and it would go on to become one of the most dangerous failures in the history of American ordnance development. The building itself drew no attention. It carried no markings that suggested military activity. High fences surrounded it, guarded, entrances controlled who came and went, and armed security ensured that nothing and no one entered without authorization. To the surrounding neighborhood, it was simply another industrial facility operating behind closed doors. Few realized that inside, Eastman Kodak, the company best known for cameras and photographic film, was manufacturing a weapon. The workers called it the Lincoln plant. It was Kodak in name, but not in function. This factory was producing something that had nothing to do with photography, optics, or film. What rolled off its assembly lines looked utterly harmless. Small, round, familiar. It looked exactly like a baseball, except it was not a baseball. It was a hand grenade designed to explode the instant it struck anything. Ground, wall, water, human body, any contact at all. And the organization behind it, the Office of Strategic Services, America's wartime intelligence agency, believed this deceptively simple object would transform close combat. The logic behind it seemed flawless, almost obvious in hindsight. Baseball was deeply embedded in American culture. By the early 20th century, nearly every American male had grown up throwing one. The motion was instinctive, learned in childhood, refined in schoolyards, sandlots, and organized leagues across the country. Soldiers might struggle to master rifles, mortar, or machine guns under pressure, but throwing a baseball was second nature. The OSS reasoned that if soldiers were given a grenade, shaped exactly like a baseball, they would throw it farther, faster, and more accurately than any conventional grenade. There would be no need for additional training, no awkward grip to learn, no unfamiliar motion to practice. Muscle memory would do the work, and the enemy would never see it coming. According to ordnance, records later cited in specialist publications, such as Small Arms Review, the U.S. Army placed a contract for approximately 825,000 of these grenades. The weapon was officially designated the T-13, with its impact fuse known as the T-5. The OSS nickname for it was the Beano. In reality, only a fraction of that number would ever be manufactured. Fewer still would leave American soil. And, by the time the war ended, the grim accounting was undeniable. The T-13 Beano had killed and injured more American soldiers than enemy combatants. Its entire production run was ordered destroyed. The weapon intended to terrify German troops instead became one of the most lethal hazards faced by the men meant to use it. This is the story of how a genuinely brilliant idea became a catastrophe. The problem that Beano was designed to solve was not imaginary. It was real, documented, and deeply frustrating for Allied infantry. Standard American hand grenades in 1943 were far from ideal weapons. The Mk2 fragmentation grenade, the iconic pineapple, weighed approximately 595 grams, over 21 ounces. It was dense, heavy, and awkwardly shaped. Its segmented exterior was meant to aid fragmentation, but it also made the grenade uncomfortable to grip and difficult to throw with precision. More importantly, it required a throwing motion that felt unnatural. The weight distribution was unfamiliar. The balance was wrong. Even well-trained soldiers often struggled to throw the Mk2 as far or as accurately as they wanted, especially under combat stress. But the most dangerous flaw was shared by virtually every hand grenade in service at the time: the time delay fuse. The process was universal. Pull the pin, release the spoon, count 4 to 5 seconds, then the grenade detonates. On paper, this delay was a safety feature. It gave the thrower time to seek cover. It prevented accidental detonation during the throwing motion. It reduced the chance of the grenade exploding in the user's hand. In combat, however, it created a terrifying opportunity for the enemy. German soldiers, particularly experienced veterans from the Eastern Front, had learned how to exploit this delay. According to Allied after-action reports from North Africa and later from Italy, German troops developed the habit of grabbing grenades that landed near them and throwing them back before they exploded. Some accounts even describe German soldiers catching grenades in midair, The time delay fuse that protected the Allied soldier also gave the enemy a chance to turn the weapon against him. The British faced the same problem. The Mills bomb, officially the No. 36 grenade, had served since 1915. It used a time delay fuse ranging from 4 to 7 seconds. Like the Mk2, it could be picked up and returned by a quick-thinking opponent. Their vulnerability was universal. Every infantry grenade in every army suffered from it. The only theoretical solution was obvious. Remove the delay. Create a grenade that detonated on impact. No warning, no second chance, no opportunity for the enemy to react. But this solution, he had defeated engineers for decades. The fundamental problem was brutally simple. A grenade sensitive enough to detonate on any impact was also sensitive enough to detonate when dropped, bumped, or mishandled. Making it safe to carry made it unreliable in combat. Making it reliable in combat made it lethal to the user. Many armies had tried, none had succeeded. The OSA believed American ingenuity could succeed where others had failed. The origin of the baseball grenade concept is commonly attributed to Colonel Carl Eifler, commander of OSS Detachment 101 operating in Burma. According to museum records and later OSS histories, Eifler observed that his men, like most American males of the era, had grown up throwing baseballs. The motion was natural, the accuracy instinctive, the power impressive. A trained pitcher could throw a baseball at over 90 miles per hour. Even an average man could throw 150 to 60 yards with reasonable accuracy. No other throwing motion was as universally ingrained. Eifler posed a deceptively simple question. What if the grenade was a baseball? The idea quickly found enthusiastic support within the OSS Research and Development branch. That branch was led by Stanley P. Lovell, a chemist and inventor whose unconventional approach to warfare earned him the nickname Professor Moriarty among colleagues. Lovell had already overseen the development of some of the USS's most notorious devices: exploding coal, disguised explosives, suicide pills, and an array of sabotage tools designed for clandestine operations. A baseball grenade fit perfectly into this portfolio. It was clever, psychological, asymmetric, a promise to exploit American cultural familiarity as a battlefield advantage. The specifications were exacting. The grenade had to match a regulation baseball as closely as possible. A circumference of 9.5 inches, a weight of 5.5 ounces, roughly 155 grams. It had to detonate on impact with any surface, at any angle. It had to be safe during handling, carrying, and the throwing motion. And it had to be simple enough for any soldier to use without specialized training. Eastman Kodak received the contract. The choice made sense. Kodak possessed advanced precision manufacturing capabilities, experience producing small mechanical components, and facilities that could be converted to secret military production without drawing attention. A camera company was an ideal cover. The grenades produced at the Lincoln plant were marked discreetly, EKC for Eastman Kodak Company, fuse designation T5, grenade designation T13 Comp. From the moment engineers began working on the design, the impossible nature of the task became clear. A regulation baseball weighing just 5.5 ounces simply could not contain enough explosive to be lethal, along with a fuse mechanism and a steel casing capable of producing effective fragmentation. Something had to give. In the end, weight was sacrificed. The final production version of the grenade weighed approximately 12 ounces, about 340 grams, more than double the original specification. Still lighter than the Mk2 pineapple grenade, but no longer a true baseball. The familiar throwing motion would still apply, but the increased weight altered the feel, range, and accuracy. The explosive charge chosen was Composition A, an RDX-based compound significantly more powerful than the TNT used in standard grenades. Approximately 9 ounces of explosives filled the interior. The steel casing was thin, around 1 millimeter, designed to fragment uniformly rather than relying on pre-scored grooves. Testing showed impressive results. At a distance of 5 yards, the grenade produced an average of 6.5 fragment hits per square foot, nearly double the fragmentation density of comparable grenades. On paper, the weapon was devastating, but the heart of the design, the T5 impact fuse, was also the source of its eventual doom. The fuse mechanism was genuinely ingenious. The grenade was topped with a weighted butterfly-shaped cap. The thrower was instructed to grip it with 2 fingers, mimicking the grip used on the seams of a baseball. A safety pin prevented premature arming when the grenade was thrown. The butterfly cap separated from the grenade body, trailing behind on a nylon cord. As the cord reached full extension, it pulled a secondary arming pin from the fuse. At that moment, the grenade became live. Any impact would trigger detonation. The OSS specification was uncompromising. The grenade had to reliably detonate when dropped from just 18 inches onto sponge rubber. This extreme sensitivity ensured that it would explode on any surface, soft ground, water, snow, or flesh. It also ensured that the margin for error was virtually non-existent. Testing began at Aberdeen Proving Ground in late 1943 and later moved to Fort Benning. Early results appeared promising enough that on June 2, 1944, just 4 days before the Normandy landings, the Army formalized the large-scale production contract. Manufacturing ramped up at the Lincoln plant. Then people started getting hurt. As production increased, the illusion of control vanished. The problem was not theoretical. It was immediate, physical, and deadly. The T5 impact fuse was proving to be far more sensitive than even its extreme design requirements demanded. Early production units detonated when dropped from as little as 6 inches, 1/3 of the specified tolerance. A device designed to explode on contact could not reliably distinguish between intentional impact and simple mishandling. At Aberdeen Proving Ground, soldiers suffered injuries when grenades detonated after being accidentally dropped during routine handling drills. 3 men were wounded early in testing before safety protocols were tightened. Even then, live grenades were handled with extraordinary caution. Movement was slow. Gestures were deliberate. Every action felt like defusing a bomb because it was. But accidental drops were not the most dangerous flaw. The true hazard was the throwing motion itself. The grenade's arming sequence depended entirely on the proper grip and clean separation of the butterfly cap. If the thrower's fingers slipped, if the cap shifted slightly, or if the nylon cord snagged or jerked prematurely, the grenade could arm early, while still in the thrower's hand. Once armed, any impact would trigger detonation, including impact with the thrower's own body. A normal throwing motion involves follow-through. The arm swings across the torso, the wrist snaps, the hand passes close to the shoulder, head, or chest. With a conventional grenade, this was harmless. With the Beano, it was potentially fatal. On November 3, 1944, the danger became undeniable. During a controlled test at a proving ground, a civilian technician threw a Beano grenade straight upward to observe the fuse's behavior. The grenade armed on the way up. Gravity did the rest. It came down directly onto the man's head and detonated instantly. He was killed on the spot. The incident is documented in testing records later cited in Small Arms Review and other specialist ordnance literature. It was not a freak accident. It was a predictable consequence of an unforgiving design. By any rational standard, the program should have ended there. It did not. The war was still raging. The need for a solution to the grenade return problem remained urgent. Rather than abandon the concept, engineers attempted to refine it. Improved versions of the fuse were developed, designated T5E1 and T5E2. These were intended to reduce sensitivity while maintaining reliable impact. Detonation. It was an impossible balancing act. In February 1945, approximately 10,000 T-13 grenades were shipped to Europe for field trials. The objective was simple: determine whether the grenade could function reliably under real combat conditions. The results were catastrophic. According to Army Ordnance records cited in specialist literature, European field trials involved 2,742 grenades thrown under operational conditions. Of those, roughly 10% failed to detonate. 1 in 10 grenades landed with a dull thud and did nothing. A dud grenade is not merely ineffective, it is a delayed threat. Soldiers approaching what they believed to be an unexpected device faced the risk of sudden detonation. Engineers attempting to recover or disarm them faced the same danger. The grenade designed to eliminate hesitation now created it. The pattern of failures was clear. Soft ground absorbed too much energy. Mud, snow, and water prevented sufficient impact force. Cold weather exacerbated the problem. European winter conditions caused the fuse mechanisms to stiffen or freeze. The firing pin often lacked the force. Two needed to strike the detonator. The grenade was simultaneously too sensitive and not sensitive enough. But duds were only part of the problem. 5 grenades detonated prematurely during the throwing motion itself, not on impact with the ground, not after landing, but while still in motion. Before reaching the target, contemporary testing records and latest summaries report 2 men killed and approximately 44 wounded during these trials. These casualties were inflicted not by enemy fire, but by the weapon itself. On March 22, 1945, General Joseph Stilwell ordered all testing halted immediately. The decision was abrupt and final. 7 days later, on March 29th, production was suspended. On June 15th, with the war in Europe over and Japan's surrender imminent, the order came down to terminate the program entirely and destroy all remaining stock. Bino was dead. The final accounting was damning. According to research by Dr. John W. Brunner, author of one of the definitive references on OSS weapons, the T-13 Bino killed and injured more American personnel during development and testing than it ever harmed enemy combatants. Anthony G. Williams, writing in Small Arms Review, summarized the program bluntly. The Bino, he noted, held the dubious distinction of having killed and injured more of its own users than the enemy. Claims of combat use persist. Some secondary sources suggest that the Bino may have been issued in limited numbers during the Normandy invasion in June 1944. These claims remain unverified and contradictory. The Specialist Ordnance Reference, Inert Ordnance, states clearly that it is not known whether the Bino was ever used in combat. No confirmed enemy casualties have been documented in authoritative archival sources. The popular image of German soldiers panicking at the sight of a baseball grenade appears to be a modern embellishment. Extensive research across military archives, declassified documents, and veteran testimonies has produced no evidence that German forces were aware of the weapon, let alone frightened by it. The myth makes for better drama. The truth makes for better history. The Bino failed because impact fuses for hand grenades remained fundamentally dangerous. The requirement that a grenade detonate on any contact conflicts irreconcilably with the requirement that it be safe to handle. Every attempt to improve reliability increased sensitivity. Every attempt to improve safety introduced failure. Other armies recognized this reality and adapted accordingly. The British chose predictability over innovation. The Mills bomb retained its time delay fuse throughout the war. British soldiers learned to cook off grenades, holding them briefly after releasing the spoon before throwing. It was dangerous, but it was consistent. The grenade behaved the same way every time. The German approach was different. The style hand grenade, the stick grenade, used a handle to increase throwing range through leverage rather than altering the fuse. The handle allowed German soldiers to throw farther while maintaining the safety of a time delay detonation. Range was increased without increasing sensitivity. The American solution was the most imaginative and the most hazardous. Instead of modifying the grenade, it attempted to modify the soldier's relationship with the weapon. It matched ergonomics to instinct. It assumed human familiarity could compensate for mechanical fragility. The idea itself was not foolish. It was ahead of its time. Modern impact grenades exist. They rely on electronic fuses equipped with accelerometers capable of distinguishing between the acceleration profile of a deliberate throw and that of a drop or bump. The technology required to make the Bino safe simply did not exist in the 1940s. It is worth remembering that the OSS produced many successful innovations during the war. From intelligence, tradecraft, to resistance support operations, the organization demonstrated remarkable creativity. The Bino was an exception, not the rule. Very few T-13 grenades survive today. The destruction order was thorough. Confirmed examples can be found in institutional collections such as the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Museum at Fort Liberty, North Carolina, which houses artifacts from the Brunner collection of OSS equipment. A specimen is also displayed at the Spy Museum in New York City. Private collectors occasionally acquire verified examples through specialist dealers. Prices typically range from $2,000 to $3,000, reflecting both rarity and historical significance. Stanley P. Lovell later acknowledged the failure in his 1963 memoir of Spies and Stratagems. The concept, he admitted, never achieved its promise. The engineering could not keep pace with the idea. The legacy of the BWII is not one of stupidity or incompetence. It is a lesson in technological limits. American soldiers really could throw a baseball-shaped object farther and more accurately than a conventional grenade. Impact detonation really would have prevented enemies from throwing grenades back. But no one in 1944 could build a fuse capable of detonating on enemy contact while ignoring friendly mistakes. The final numbers speak for themselves. A contract for hundreds of thousands of grenades, roughly 10,000 shipped for trials, 2 Americans killed outright, approximately 44 wounded, no confirmed enemy casualties. The harmless American baseball that was meant to terrify the Germans killed Americans instead. The design was too clever for the technology of its era, and the weapon Eastman Kodak built in secret inside an unmarked factory in Rochester became one of the most dangerous failures in American ordnance history. Sometimes, the best ideas are the ones that arrive too early. The BWII was one of them.